Saint Nocturne University. Book 2. Chapter 5. Camille St. Crowne should have looked defeated. That irritated everyone. She sat in the temporary holding room beneath the administration building with her ankles crossed, her back straight, and both wrists resting on the arms of a wooden chair carved with containment sigils. The reversed memory seals around her skin glowed faint blue instead of red now, turning every vein in her hands into a visible map. The room had once been used for storage, then emergency discipline, then donor wine, then storage again. Saint Nocturne loved repurposing spaces without admitting what they had held before. The walls were plain concrete. The mirror across from Camille had been covered with black cloth, nailed at every corner and ringed in salt. It still whispered. Not constantly. Only when nobody else was speaking. Camille listened like she was hearing music through a wall. Professor Graves stood near the door with two Root Circle faculty members, a blood court legal observer, and a campus security officer who kept looking at his own shoes because Camille had smiled at him once and he had not recovered. Celia St. Crowne entered at 3:17 p.m. Alone. No entourage. No lawyer. No family elder. That was how Camille knew the conversation would be personal enough to matter and official enough to survive minutes. Celia's dark blue dress from Court Tower had been replaced with a black suit. Her silver-streaked hair was smooth, her lipstick perfect, and her eyes tired in a way no cosmetic magic had been allowed to hide. Camille looked at her cousin. "Celia," she said warmly. "You look like you've been through a revolution and a parent-teacher conference." Celia turned to Professor Graves. "Leave us." The blood court legal observer immediately said, "That is not advice." Celia looked at him. He stopped. Professor Graves did not move. "No private interviews." Celia's gaze flicked to the covered mirror. "Then stay," she said. "But do not interrupt family until family becomes evidence." Professor Graves considered her. Then stepped back. Camille's smile deepened. "You always did like an audience." Celia walked to the table and placed a folder down. Camille glanced at it. "Is that for me?" "No." "Pity. I was hoping for reading material. It is an emergency petition to remove you from all blood court student oversight, family mentorship, legal apprenticeship, donor relations, scholarship advisement, and memory arbitration." Camille's smile did not move. But her fingers did. One tiny shift against the chair arms. Celia noticed. "Good." Camille said, "Ambitious." "Unanimous enough." Enough is a weak word. So is power when every contract behind it has become discoverable. Camille looked amused again. "And now you have found ethics because your son embarrassed you." Celia did not answer quickly. That was new. Then she said, "No. My son embarrassed me because I misplaced ethics long enough for him to find them first." The room went quiet. Even the mirror stopped whispering. Camille stared at her. For the first time since her capture, something like anger broke cleanly through her elegance. "You think they will spare you because you say pretty things now?" Camille asked. "The students? The council? The city? You sat at every table. You signed every donor letter. You let me handle what your softness could not stomach, then turned shocked when my hands were dirty." Celia held her gaze. "Yes." Camille blinked. Celia continued, "Yes, Camille. I did. And I will answer for that in public if the new boards call me. But you will not hide behind my guilt." The covered mirror whispered, almost too faint to hear. "Good. Professor Graves straightened. Camille's eyes flicked to the mirror. Celia followed the glance. For a second, the room changed. Cold pressed against the walls. The black cloth over the mirror fluttered though there was no wind. Salt grains along the frame trembled. Professor Graves lifted her cane. "Lucienne," she said. The mirror went still. Camille smiled slowly. Celia's voice hardened. "You are still in contact with him." Camille looked at her wrists. These seals were designed by people who believed memory only lived in the mind. She lifted her gaze. "Lucienne and I learned a long time ago that institutions remember through loyal rooms." Professor Graves stepped forward. "What does that mean?" Camille looked at her with open delight. "Oh, Sana. You helped write the pact and still think the chapel was the only heart." Celia went still. Professor Graves' face drained of color. Camille leaned back as far as the restraints allowed. "The heart chamber is sealed," she said. "Lucienne is contained. Saint Nocturne is wounded. But a university is not one room. It is records. Habits. Committees. Alumni donations. Disciplinary language. Hallway gossip. Course catalogs. Traditions. Little cruelties that survive because everyone calls them normal." Her eyes moved to Celia. "You did not defeat the institution. You inconvenienced its appetite." The mirror whispered again. This time, everyone heard. "Begin again." Professor Graves struck the mirror cloth with her cane. The whisper stopped. Celia picked up the folder. "You will be transferred to blood court custody under public student witness." Camille laughed. "No," Celia said. "Not private family custody. Not a quiet room with an expensive lawyer. Public." Camille's smile thinned. "There she is," Celia said softly. "A consequence you cannot aesthetic your way through." She turned to leave. Camille called after her, "Celia." Celia stopped. Camille's voice lowered. "Ask your son what he promised Aya in Court Tower before he knew she was Zora's sister." Celia turned back slowly. Camille looked satisfied. Professor Graves' eyes sharpened. Celia said, "You are baiting." "Yes," Camille said. "But bait can still be true." The mirror behind the cloth chuckled. Upstairs, Saint Nocturne tried very hard to look like a normal college after a supernatural coup. It failed with enthusiasm. On the main quad, the emergency committees had set up tables beneath tents that had been borrowed from orientation storage and repurposed with handwritten signs. "Archive consent office temporary intake. Blood contract review do not panic sign anything. Housing audit/market reparations. Howl roll restitution. Veil-born voice, image, face and performance consent. Faculty accountability board. Lost items/cursed items/emotionally confusing items." That last table was run by Micah Reed, who had somehow acquired a whistle, a folding chair, 3 clipboards, and a bag of chips. A student walked up holding a cracked hand mirror wrapped in a towel. Micah looked at it. "Does it talk?" "Only to my boyfriend." "About what?" "My ex." Micah took the mirror and placed it in a box labeled messy but non-lethal. Next. At the archive consent table, Zora sat beside Talia, Delphine Hart, and a Root Circle graduate assistant named Omar who had already threatened to hex the printer twice. Zora had not meant to sit down. She had come to ask one question. Then someone handed her a form. Then another student asked whether recovered screenshots counted as personal archive or public evidence. Then Talia sat beside her and said, "You owe me hallway labor." Then suddenly Zora was processing intake slips for students who looked just as confused and angry as she felt. The work was awful. It was also clarifying. A blood court girl wanted to know if her family's feeding records could be kept from her roommate but still used in a legal complaint. A root circle boy asked whether spell work stolen from his grandmother could be returned to family ownership if it had already been published under a professor's name. A Vale-born student wanted every unauthorized photo of their shifted forms removed from campus archives. A human-adjacent medium asked if the school had records of ghosts assigned to residential housing without disclosure. Talia stamped a form so hard the table shook. "Why is there a category for undisclosed dorm ghosts?" she demanded. Omar looked over. "Because there are undisclosed dorm ghosts. I live in Magnolia." Zora said, "You've met the plumbing spirits. That is different. They have no ambition." Delphine, reviewing a file with a pearl pen, said, "Magnolia's fourth floor has at least 2 ghosts, one residual sobbing loop, and a former resident assistant who only manifests during housing inspections." Talia stared. "And nobody thought to mention this." Delphine did not look up. "It's in the housing addendum." Talia leaned across the table. "Show me where." Delphine slid a packet over. Talia read. Her face darkened. "This font is 6 points." Delphine nodded. "Predatory." Zora glanced at Delphine. That almost sounded like solidarity. Delphine lifted one shoulder. "Do not get sentimental. I hate inaccessible legal language because it is inelegant." "Of course." A student approached the table clutching a sealed folder. Zora looked up. "Name." The girl's eyes were red. "Amira Cole. Archive issue. My mother's memory." Zora set her pen down. The girl swallowed. "She worked here. Dining staff. Years ago. She always said she quit because of migraines, but her record says she was dismissed after a non-fatal exposure event. I don't know what that means." Talia's expression softened. Dre, who was passing with a box of forms for housing audit, stopped. Zora reached for a yellow consent sheet. "Okay," she said gently. "First, we are not opening anything without your mother's consent if she's able to give it. Second, we can request labor-related records through staff operations and archive consent together." She looked at Dre. He nodded and stepped closer. Amira wiped her cheek. "What if she doesn't want to know?" "Then she doesn't have to," Zora said. The words hit Zora in her own chest. The childhood record waiting on her phone. Aya's court operations file. Her mother's hidden memories. All those doors. All those locks. Not today. Not unless chosen. Amira nodded slowly. Dre took the staff record request. "I'll help track the employment side." Amira looked at his dining hall shirt. "You work there. And now apparently I govern there against my will." That startled a tiny laugh out of her. "Good." Zora watched Dre walk the student toward the staff operations table. Talia leaned closer. "You're good at this." Zora did not look at her. "I'm good at secrets." "No. You were good at hoarding secrets. This is different." Zora's throat tightened. Delphine said, still writing, "Unfortunately, she is correct." Zora looked between them. "I hate this table." Talia smiled. Trauma Adjacent Committee. Across the quad, Blood Contract Review had attracted the worst line. Vampires loved paperwork until other people read it. Malik stood behind a table with Serafina, Celia St. Crowne, a nervous law professor, and 2 student witnesses from different factions. A sign taped to the front read, "No biting. No family pressure. No contracts signed without third-party review." Someone had added, "Especially if your uncle says it's tradition." Malik was reviewing a contract from a sophomore vampire legacy who looked like he had not slept. "This says your family can claim emotional damages if you date outside approved alliances," Malik said. The sophomore nodded miserably. Serafina leaned over. "And here it says if you break a relationship agreement, they can freeze your housing account." The boy whispered, "I thought that was normal." Malik and Serafina exchanged a look. Celia, seated beside them, said quietly, "It is common." The boy looked relieved. Celia continued, "Common is not normal." The relief faded into confusion. Malik looked at his mother. She did not look back. He returned to the contract. "We can flag this for coercive dependency review." Serafina added, "and immediate housing protection." The boy nodded, eyes wet. When he left, Malik rubbed both hands over his face. "I hate my entire upbringing." Serafina said, "Take a number." Celia sorted another folder. "Self-pity after lunch. We have 43 more." Malik looked at her. "You're enjoying this?" "No," she said. "I'm useful." "There's a difference." Serafina paused at the next file. Her face changed. Malik noticed. "What?" She angled the folder away from him. "Nothing." "Serafina." She looked toward Celia. Celia's expression hardened slightly, reading the name upside down. Malik reached for the folder. Serafina held it back. That made him still. "What is it?" Serafina closed the folder. "Aya's court protection contract." Malik's face went cold. Celia said, "That should have been routed to archive consent. It was copied here because there's a blood court claim embedded." Malik held out his hand. Serafina did not give it to him. "Why?" he asked. "Because Camille said something to my mother before they took her downstairs," Serafina said. Celia's eyes closed briefly. Malik looked at his mother. "What did she say?" Celia answered because Serafina would not. "She said to ask what you promised Aya before you knew who she was." The air around the table chilled. The law professor suddenly became fascinated with his pen. Malik's face gave away too much. Serafina saw. Celia saw. A student in line saw and immediately pretended to check their phone, which meant 3 people behind them noticed too. Serafina lowered her voice. "Malik." He looked toward the archive consent table across the quad. Aya was not there. Zora was. That made it worse. "It was before the semester," Malik said. Serafina's expression became very still. "Before this semester," she repeated. "Last year. Court Tower. I met her as Aurelia Crowne. I didn't know that she was Zora's sister. I didn't know Zora had a sister. No one did." Serafina's voice stayed calm. "What did you promise?" Malik swallowed. "She helped me get out of a family contract." Celia looked sharply at him. He continued, "Not ours. Another one. My mother doesn't know half of what Camille tried to arrange." Celia's face turned dangerous. Malik looked at her. "We can do your guild later." Celia accepted that with a hard nod. He looked back at Serafina. Aurelia gave me information. In return, I promised if she ever needed a Saint Crown claim broken, I would help. Serafina's eyes narrowed. That sounds almost decent. Why did Camille say it like a grenade? Malik's silence answered. Serafina opened the folder. She read. Then laughed softly. Oh. Celia reached for the page. Serafina handed it over. Celia read it and went still. Malik looked ill. The contract contained a clause written in old blood court legal language. Serafina read it aloud, voice clipped. In the event of claim dispute, Malik St. Crowne may stand as substitute bondholder by voluntary recognition. She looked at him. You didn't promise to break her claim. You promised to take it? Malik shook his head. I didn't understand the wording. Serafina's laugh sharpened. You were raised in blood court legal language. I was 19. You were privileged, not illiterate. That landed. Malik flinched. Celia set the folder down slowly. Camille wrote this. Yes, Malik said. But you signed. His jaw tightened. Yes. The table went silent. Then Zora appeared beside them. Of course. Because Saint Nocturne had a gift for arranging emotional violence with clean sight lines. She looked from Malik to Serafina to the folder. What did he sign? Malik closed his eyes. Serafina looked at him, then at Zora. For once, she seemed almost sorry. Zora reached for the folder. No one stopped her. She read the clause. Her face changed slowly. The heat left first. Then the softness. Then anything that might have been trust. Malik said, Zora. She lifted one finger. He stopped. She read the line again. Then looked at him. You promised to own my sister. No. It says substitute bondholder. I thought it meant legal advocate. Serafina whispered, it never means that. Zora laughed once. It was worse than yelling. Of course not. Malik stepped around the table. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know what Camille was doing. Zora's voice stayed low. You never know until after the signature. That hit him harder than anger would have. Celia stood. Zora, this contract is voidable now. We can. Zora turned on her. Do not say we. Celia stopped. Good. Zora looked at Malik again. You need to tell Aya. I know. No. You need to tell her before the file tells her, before Camille uses it, before some haunted printer starts spitting copies into the quad. Malik nodded. I know. Zora leaned closer. And don't you dare make this about how bad you feel. She dropped the folder on the table and walked away. Serafina watched her go. Then turned to Malik. She's right. I know. No. You keep saying that. Knowing has not been enough for any of us. He looked at her. She pushed the folder into his hands. Go. At the Valeborn consent table, Brielle was learning that accountability involved far more forms than scandal ever had. A student wanted old footage removed from a campus promotional reel. Another wanted compensation for unauthorized aura capture in a donor brochure. A shapeshifter wanted policy requiring explicit consent before anyone tagged them in a photo, because my face was my face at the time was apparently legally complicated. Juno took that case personally and started drafting language with a ferocity that made the law professor from Blood Contract Review wander over and ask if they needed support. Juno stared at him. I need you to explain why the phrase reasonable expectation of facial continuity appears in this policy draft. The law professor looked embarrassed. That was old language. It's ugly. It is. Remove it. Yes. Brielle watched, impressed despite herself. Nia sat beside her, reviewing memory consent forms. She had chosen the table near the end, after standing beside it for 10 minutes and realizing no one was going to force her to sit. Her presence changed how people approached. Some softened too much. Some avoided her eyes. Some thanked her awkwardly for being brave. She hated that part. After the fourth "you're so strong," Nia looked up and said, I am also tired and irritated. The student apologized and took a form. Brielle pretended not to smile. Nia caught her. What? Nothing. Good. A few minutes later, Brielle's phone buzzed with another legal office message. She ignored it. Nia glanced at the screen. Lawyer money. Maybe. Good. You sound invested. I am. Quiet settlements are where institutions bury apologies. Brielle looked at her. Nia kept reviewing forms, but her voice softened by half an inch. If you make them pay loud, it helps the next siren. Brielle swallowed. I'll try. Nia looked up. Do the work. Be judged by the result. Brielle's eyes narrowed. Did 7 say that? No. Aya said it to 7. Figures. She talks like a consequence in heels. Juno said from the other end of the table, she was blood court trained. Brielle looked over. So was Malik, and he mostly talks like guilt in Cologne. Nia made a sound. A laugh, almost. Brielle's face lit for half a second, then she controlled it. Too late. Nia saw. And did not punish her for it. Behind them, the Valeborn Theatre studio door opened, and Mama Odessa swept out wearing sunglasses indoors and a lavender coat. Children, she announced, the performance consent draft is too polite. Juno sighed. I knew you'd say that. It needs consequences. There are consequences. It says violation may result in review. That's policy language. That is a nap. Brielle took the draft and wrote in the margin. Violation triggers immediate student-controlled audit, compensation review, and public disclosure unless survivor opts out. Mama Odessa peered over her glasses. Better. Nia said, add removal of faculty access. Brielle wrote it. Juno added, and ban donor use until investigation completes. Brielle wrote that too. Mama Odessa smiled. There. Teeth. Across campus, Aya stood outside the old chapel. She had not meant to come. That was a lie. She had come because the chapel was where everything began, and because sometimes surviving a place made people return to it like the body needed proof the door could be approached without opening. The chapel doors remained sealed. No sigils visible. No chains. No guards. Just shut. That made it worse. Behind them, somewhere beneath stone and ritual, Lucienne Nightingale had been pulled into the campus heart. Absorbed, contained, consumed, whatever word people were using to avoid saying the school had eaten its dean. Aya stood at the bottom of the steps with Nasir beside her. Neither spoke for a long time. Then Nasir said, Did he raise you? Aya considered the question. No. Did he think he did? Yes. Nasir nodded. That matched enough. She looked at him. Did he visit you? Every year on my birthday. Her face tightened. What did he say? Nasir looked at the chapel doors. Usually nothing important. Asked about school. My hunger. My dreams. Whether I felt drawn to places I had never been. Aya closed her eyes. He monitored you. Yes. Did you know? I knew he never came empty. She looked at him. He continued, he always brought a gift. Books. Charms. Old coins. A watch once. Things that felt personal until I realized they were probably tests. Aya's voice softened. That is a lonely way to grow up. He looked at her. So was yours. The chapel doors pulsed once. Soft. Almost like the heartbeat Zora had heard in the courtyard. Aya stepped back. Nasir did too. The doors did not open. A voice came from behind them. Smart. They turned. Malik stood at the edge of the path, holding a folder. Aya saw the folder and went still. Nasir's expression hardened. Malik looked like he would rather be anywhere else and knew that was not a defense. Aya, he said. She looked at the folder. Court review. Yes. Mine. Yes. Nasir moved closer to her, not blocking, just present. Aya noticed. So did Malik. Good. Malik took a breath. Before I say anything, Zora already saw it. Aya's face changed. Of course she did. I didn't show her on purpose. Saint Nocturne specializes in accidental cruelty. He nodded once. I signed something last year. When you were Aurelia Crowne. Her eyes cooled. I remember. I thought I was promising to help break your claim if you needed it. Aya's expression did not move. Malik continued, forcing the words out. The actual clause named me substitute bondholder. Nasir's eyes flashed. Aya did not react at first. Then she laughed softly. Not surprised. That made Malik feel worse. I wondered when you'd find that. He stared. You knew? Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because when you signed it, you were so proud of thinking you'd done something kind. Her smile was sad and sharp. And because I needed to know whether you would still help if helping didn't make you feel noble. Malik absorbed that. Nasir looked at Aya. You let him stay named. I had very few weapons, she said. A guilty St. Crown boy with a bad contract was one of them. Malik almost flinched. Almost. He deserved the sentence, so he stood still. Aya stepped closer. Did you ever intend to enforce it? No, he said immediately. Would your family have? Yes. Would Camille? Yes. Then the harm existed whether you meant it or not. He nodded. I know. Aya's eyes sharpened. Do you? Malik thought of Serafina saying the same thing. Knowing had not been enough. He opened the folder and removed the contract. I am voiding the clause under blood contract review, but that is paperwork. Not repair. You decide what happens to the record. Public, sealed, evidence, erased from family claim but preserved for audit. Your choice. Aya looked at him for a long moment. Then at the contract. Preserve for audit, she said. Remove your name from any active bond. Attach a statement that consent was fraudulent and the signer claims responsibility for ignorance as harm. Malik nodded. I'll sign it. Yes, Aya said. You will. A beat. Then Malik said, "I'm sorry." Aya watched him. "I know." He gave a faint, bitter smile. "That answer is going around. It's a useful beginning. Not an ending." Nasir looked toward the chapel again. The door pulsed a second time. Harder. Aya stepped back. Malik noticed. "Has it been doing that?" "Yes," Nasir said. "How many times?" "Twice." The chapel door pulsed again. 3. This time, a crack of red light appeared beneath it. Malik's phone buzzed. So did Aya's. Nasir's. A system alert appeared. Not shade room. Not archive. Heart chamber pressure rising. Containment status, unstable. Cause, external contact attempt. Aya looked toward the administration building. Camille. Under the administration building, Camille smiled at the covered mirror. The room around her had emptied for a shift change. That was the trick with new systems. They still needed schedules. Schedules created gaps. Gaps created doors. The reverse seals around her wrists burned, but pain had always been information. The mirror whispered Lucien's voice through the cloth. 3 pulses. Camille closed her eyes. "I felt them. Celia moved against you. Celia is having a moral episode. It will pass or become politics. The students are forming committees." Camille laughed. "Adorable. Do not underestimate them again." Her smile faded. The warning in his voice was real. Not fear. Experience. Camille leaned forward as far as the chair allowed. "What do you need?" The mirror cloth darkened with a shape pressing from the other side. "Not a face. A hand." "Not escape," Lucien said. "Not yet." "Then." "Continuity." Camille understood. A body could be contained. A dean could vanish. A heart could be sealed. But institutions survived through successors. Policies. Records. People willing to begin again. Camille's eyes lifted toward the ceiling, toward the quad where students filled committees with rage and clipboards. "Who?" she asked. The mirror whispered a name. Camille went perfectly still. Then she laughed. Softly at first. Then with genuine delight. "Oh," she said. "That is vicious." Upstairs, in the temporary governance office, the cheerful orientation voice printed a list of emergency appointments. One page slid from the printer after the others. No one noticed at first. It landed beneath the table, face down. A student aide picked it up 20 minutes later and frowned. At the top, in red ink, it read: "Interim student liaison to Heart Chamber, pending acceptance." Below it was one name. Zora Baptiste.